The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 417 civilizations sat in their designated seats, each one carved from materials sacred to their homeworlds. The Zephyrians occupied thrones of living coral that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The Keth delegation perched on pedestals of pure energy, their gaseous forms contained within shimmering force fields. The mechanical Nexari stood rigid in their charging alcoves, optical sensors glowing with cold intelligence. But one seat remained conspicuously. Curiously, empty Counselor Vex High of the Alterian Republic shifted uncomfortably in her crystalline chair, her forearms drumming against its surface in a nervous rhythm. As the newly appointed chair of diplomatic relations, she had inherited many puzzling traditions from her predecessor. None more puzzling than the vacant seat marked with strange symbols that no translation matrix could decode. The 4,847th Council session will now commence, announced the Chamber's AI in a voice that resonated through 17 different dimensional frequencies. All delegations are present and accounted for, except ... The AI paused. It always paused. At this point, except for the Terra delegation. Xi's primary eyes focused on the empty seat, while her secondary eyes scanned the assembled delegates. She had asked about Terra during her briefing. Her predecessor, the ancient counselor Ethmog, had simply stated that Terra was no longer relevant and changed the subject. The seat had been empty for over 200 standard years, yet no one had ever moved to officially remove it. Counselor Vex High came a melodic voice from across the chamber. Ambassador Lyrine of the Celestial Federation floated several meters. Above her pearlescence platform, her ethereal form shimmering like captured starlight. Might I suggest we finally address the ... anomaly in our proceedings? A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Keth delegation's gaseous forms swirled more rapidly. The Nexori's optical sensors dimmed and brightened in rapid succession, their equivalent of nervous laughter. What anomaly? Vex-High asked, though she suspected she knew. The empty seat, Lyrine said, her voice carrying harmonics that made several species shiver. The Terra seat. For 2 centuries we have begun every session by acknowledging their absence, yet none of us seem to remember why they are absent, or indeed who they were. Elder Thornock of the Stonesinger Coalition rose from his granite throne, his massive frame causing the floor to vibrate. Some things are better left undisturbed, young Lyrine. Our predecessors had their reasons. What reasons? High pressed. I have searched the archives. There's no record of Terra's departure, no documentation of their species, no explanation for the empty seat. It is as if someone deliberately erased all trace of them from our records. The chamber fell silent, except for the ambient hum of life support systems maintaining atmospheres for dozens of different species. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, then threatening. Finally, Ambassador Krextai of the Void Watcher spoke, his voice emanating from the shifting darkness that comprised his form. Perhaps, he said slowly, there is a reason. The records were erased. Perhaps some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve. Vex-High felt a chill run down her spine, all 4 of them. What do you mean, dangerous? But Krextai had already retreated into his shadows. Offering no further explanation, the session continued with routine matters. Trade disputes between the spiral arms, mining rights in the neutral zone, environmental, restoration projects for worlds recovering from stellar incidents. But Vex-High found herself repeatedly glancing at the empty Terra seat. After the session adjourned, she lingered in the chamber until only the maintenance drones remained there. Mechanical arms cleaning and polishing the various seats. She approached the Terra seat and examined it closely for the first time. It was unlike any other in the chamber. While most seats were crafted from materials reflecting their species' homeworlds or technological achievements, the Terra seat appeared to be carved from a single piece of unremarkable stone, gray granite perhaps, or basalt. The symbols etched into its surface were crude compared to the elegant scripts of other civilizations' angular marks that looked almost primitive. But as Vex-High traced the symbols with one of her fingers, something extraordinary happened. The stone grew warm under her touch, and the symbols began to glow with a soft golden light. Images flickered through her mind, not her own memories, but something else. Something that made her gasp and step back. She had seen flashes of blue. Skies, vast oceans, and creatures that walked upright on two legs. Creatures with only 2 eyes, 2 arms, hair that grew from their heads in various colors. They seemed impossibly fragile. Yet in those brief flashes, she had sensed something else. Something that made her hearts race with inexplicable fear. Fascinating, isn't it? Vexai spun around to find a figure emerging from the shadows near. The chamber's main entrance was humanoid in shape but clearly artificial in nexury, though unlike any she had seen before. This one's optical sensors glowed with warm golden light instead of the typical cold blue, and its movements seemed more fluid, more ... alive. "I am Archive Unit Designation, Keeper Prime," the figure said, its voice carrying subtle emotional inflections that no nexury should possess. "I've been waiting for someone to ask the right questions." "You're not supposed to be here?" Vexai said, her hand moving instinctively to the communication device at her side. "The chamber is closed to all but authorized personnel." "I am authorized," Keeper Prime replied. "My authorization dates back 217 standard years, to the day the Terra seat was vacated. I was assigned to watch, to wait, and to reveal the truth when the time was right." Vexai's forearms trembled. "What truth?" Keeper Prime's optical sensors focused on the empty seat. "The truth about why we left that seat empty. The truth about why the records were erased. The truth about why the mere mention of Terra makes even the eldest among us uncomfortable." The golden light in the ancient symbols pulsed once more, as if responding to the machine's words. "Terra," Keeper Prime continued, "was not just another member of this council. They were the reason this council exists at all. And they were also the reason we learned to be afraid." Chapter 2. The Keeper's Tale in the Depths of Archive Station Omega 7. A forgotten facility orbiting a dead star in the galaxy's outer rim. Keeper Prime led Vexai through corridors that hadn't seen organic life in over a century. The stations. Artificial gravity fluctuated as they walked, a sign of failing systems that should have been maintained decades ago. "Why here?" Gusai asked, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "Why bring me to this abandoned place?" "Because," Keeper Prime replied, his optical sensors dimming to match the station's emergency lighting, "this is where we hid the truth." They entered a vast chamber filled with data storage matrices, their crystalline structures dark and dormant. But as Keeper Prime approached the central console, matrices began to hum with life, casting dancing patterns of light across the walls. "I should explain," the artificial being said, his voice carrying a weight that seemed impossible for a machine. "I am not like other Nexari. I was created by the Council specifically to preserve certain sensitive information. Information deemed too dangerous for the general population, yet too important to destroy completely." Vexai watched as holographic displays materialized around them, showing star charts, species profiles, and historical timelines. "What kind of information?" "The complete record of the Terra incident," Keeper Prime said. "Beginning with their first contact with galactic civilization." The hologram shifted, displaying an image of a small blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Terror, as they called it, Earth, third planet from its star, located in what we now call the Sol system. When we first encountered them, they seemed unremarkable. A young species, barely 200,000 years old, still confined to their homeworld. "Barely 200,000?" Vexai repeated, incredulous. "That's nothing. Most species don't even develop tool use until they're at least 500,000 years old." "Indeed. And that should have been our first warning." Keeper Prime gestured, and the display zoomed in on the planet's surface. But they had already developed nuclear technology, rudimentary spaceflight, and something we had never encountered before, form of adaptive intelligence that seemed to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. The images showed sprawling cities, vast agricultural complexes, and what appeared to be primitive spacecraft launching from the planet's surface. But there was something unsettling about the scene's sense of barely controlled energy, of potential. On the verge of explosion, the council voted to make contact. Keeper Prime continued. Standard first contact protocol. Establish communication. Assess technological development. Determine compatibility with galactic civilization. Ambassador Lyrian's predecessor, Serthiel, was chosen to lead the delegation. What happened? Hologram shifted to show a sleek council vessel approaching the blue planet. At first, everything proceeded normally. The humans, that's what they called themselves, were cautious but welcoming. They asked. Abolish communication through mathematics and basic pictographs. They showed remarkable adaptability in learning our technologies. Vexai leaned forward, studying the images of the first human council interactions. The humans did appear unremarkable. Bilateral symmetry, obvious mammalian characteristics. They looked fragile compared to most galactic species. The representatives were invited to observe a council session, Keeper Prime said. Standard procedure for potential new members. A delegation of 12 humans traveled to the council chamber, the same chamber you know today. What were they like? Curious, intelligent, remarkably quick to understand complex political and technological concepts. But there was something else, something our sensors couldn't quite quantify. An energy signature that seemed to fluctuate based on their emotional states. The hologram now showed the council chamber as it existed 2 centuries ago, with representatives from only 384 species at the time. Vexai could see the 12 human delegates in their simple gray uniforms, standing near the seat that would later be reserved for Terra. The session was routine, Keeper Prime said. Negotiations between the Zephyrian Collective and the Andromedan Empire. A territorial dispute in the Vega sector. Environmental remediation for a world damaged by stellar radiation. Routine, Vexai repeated. So what went wrong? Keeper Prime's optical sensors flickered. Everything changed when Counselor Bromtai of the Stellar Dominion presented his proposal for the inferior species relocation project. Vexai felt her blood chill. She knew about the Stellar Dominion, an expansionist empire that had controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy before mysteriously collapsing 3 centuries ago. Relocation project? The Dominion had claimed 17 star systems inhabited by what they classified as primitive species. Their proposal was to relocate these populations to reservation worlds while exploiting the resources of their homeworlds. The hologram showed Counselor Bromtai, a massive reptilian creature with scales that shifted color as he spoke. Around him, the assembled delegates listened with the detached interest typical of routine political discourse. The proposal had been debated for months, Keeper Prime explained. Most species viewed it as a standard territorial expansion, but legal under galactic law. The affected species were pre-space flight, classified as non-sentient under Council regulations, but the humans objected. No, Keeper Prime said quietly. At first, they simply observed. But then something changed. One of the human delegates, a female named Sarah Chan, asked to see the full data on the affected species. The hologram focused on the human delegate, a small woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. The council provided the requested information: genetic profiles, technological assessments, population densities, cultural observations. Vexai watched as the human delegates huddled together, reviewing the data on handheld devices. Their body language was tense, their voices low but urgent. What did they discover? Keeper Prime paused, his optical sensors dimming. That 3 of the 17 species showed clear signs of tool use, artistic expression, and social organization. They were sentient by any reasonable definition, but the Dominion had deliberately classified them otherwise. Vexai struggled to find words. That's genocide. The deliberate destruction of sentient species is forbidden by the most fundamental laws of galactic civilization. Yes, Keeper Prime agreed, and that's when the humans began to change. The hologram shifted to show the human delegates returning to their seats. But something was different about them now. Their movements were more purposeful, their posture more alert. And around them a subtle energy field had begun to manifest, barely visible, but undeniably present. The female delegate, Chen, requested Permission to address the council, Keeper Prime said. She stood up, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the entire chamber without amplification. The hologram showed Sarah Chen rising to her feet, her small frame somehow commanding the attention of beings who could have crushed her without effort. Honored counselors, Keeper Prime quoted, his voice taking on different inflections as he recalled her words. My species is new to this galaxy, and we have much to learn about your ways and customs. But there is one thing we learned long ago, written in the deepest codes of our existence. The strong have a duty to protect the weak, not to prey upon them. Vexai felt a strange stirring in her chest as she listened. There was something about those words, something that resonated with feelings she didn't understand. The Dominion's representative dismissed her objection. Keeper Prime continued. Claimed that primitive species had no rights under galactic law. Chen's response was ... illuminating. What did she say? She said, Then your law is wrong, and we will not honor it. The air in the archive chamber seemed to grow heavy as Keeper Prime spoke those words. On the hologram, Vexai could see the ripple of shock that passed through the assembled delegates. The Dominion counselor laughed, Keeper Prime said. He pointed out that humans were barely more advanced than the species being relocated. He asked what a primitive species could possibly do to stop the combined might of the stellar Dominion. Keeper Prime's optical sensors brightened, focusing on Vexai with unsettling intensity. That, he said, was when we learned what humans were truly capable of. The hologram froze on the image of Sarah Chen's face, her eyes now blazing with something that made Vexai step back in instinctive fear. What happened next? She whispered.
Oh.
War, Keeper Prime replied simply. But not the kind of war anyone expected. # Chapter 3. The revelation, the holographic display shifted dramatically. It's now showing tactical readouts and fleet movements across multiple star systems. Red indicators marked stellar Dominion forces, massive dreadnoughts, carrier groups, and planetary bombardment platforms. Blue indicators represented the defending forces of the 17 targeted systems and scattered throughout the display. Like tiny golden sparks were the human ships. The humans had exactly 47 vessels, Keeper Prime explained, his voice carrying a note of something like awe, transport ships, scientific survey craft, a handful of exploration vessels barely equipped with defensive systems. Against the Dominion's 12,000-ship armada, Vexai studied the tactical display with growing confusion. This makes no sense. How could such a primitive fleet possibly challenge the Dominion? The Keeper Prime said, is exactly what Counselor Bromtai thought. He issued an ultimatum. The humans had 72 standard hours to withdraw from Dominion space, or face complete annihilation. The display showed the human ships taking defensive positions around the 3 inhabited worlds that the Dominion planned to evacuate. The size differential was absurd, like insects preparing to fight giants. Sarah Chen sent a single message in response, Keeper Prime continued. She broadcasted on all frequencies, in all known languages, to every ship and listening post in the sector. What was the message? 3 words. We stand ready. The hologram began to move, showing the first engagement as Dominion scout ships approached the outermost world. Vexai expected to see the human vessels quickly overwhelmed, but what she witnessed instead defied everything she knew about space combat. The human ships moved unlike anything in the Council's tactical databases. They didn't follow standard formation patterns or engage at optimal ranges. Instead, they seemed to dance through space, their movements unpredictable and chaotic, yet somehow perfectly coordinated. How are they doing that? Vexai breathed. Watching a tiny human craft somehow outmaneuver 3 Dominion destroyers simultaneously. That's what every tactical analyst in the galaxy was asking, Keeper Prime replied.
And the humans weren't following any known combat doctrine?
They were improvising, adapting, creating new strategies in real time. The display zoomed in on one engagement, showing a human transport ship clearly not designed for combats, somehow disabling a Dominion cruiser 3 times its size. The transport had used its mining equipment to tear through the cruiser's armor, then vented its cargo hold atmosphere to create a temporary shield against energy weapons. Impossible, Vexai murmured. Cargo atmosphere doesn't work that way. The physics. The physics said it shouldn't work, Keeper Prime agreed, but it did. Again and again, the humans found ways to make the impossible possible. They turned cargo containers into kinetic weapons, used medical scanners to locate weak points in ship armor, reprogrammed communication arrays to disrupt Dominion targeting systems. The tactical display continued to show engagement after engagement, each one more improbable than the last. The humans seemed to have an instinctive understanding of how to take any tool, any piece of technology, and transform it into something deadly. But surely the Dominion adapted, Vexi said. They had numerical superiority, better weapons, ... They tried, Keeper Prime confirmed. Admiral Krexmer, the Dominion's most experienced commander, developed 17 different tactical responses to human combat patterns. Every one failed. How? Because the humans never used the same tactic. Twice, every engagement was different, every strategy unique. It was as if they could see possibilities that no one else could imagine. The hologram shifted to show a communication intercept from the Dominion flagship. Admiral Krexmore's scaled face filled the display, his expression a mixture of frustration and growing fear. They fight like they're insane, Keeper Prime quoted. The Admiral's words, no pattern, no logic, no respect for accepted tactical doctrine. It's as if they believe the universe will bend to their will simply because they refuse to accept reality. Vexai felt a chill of recognition. She had heard similar descriptions before, in classified reports about Rogue AI systems that had to be destroyed because their logic patterns became too dangerous to contain. The war lasted 6 standard months, Keeper Prime continued. It ended. The Stellar Dominion had lost 8,000 ships, 4 fleet admirals, and their claim to 17 star systems. And the humans? Lost 11 ships and 37 personnel. Keeper Prime paused, letting the numbers sink in. Against the most powerful military force in the galaxy, Vexai stared at the tactical display, trying to process what she was. Seeing the mathematics were impossible, the casualty ratios defied every principle of military science.
How?
She whispered. Because, Keeper Prime said. We had never encountered a species that possessed humanity's particular combination of traits: individual creativity, collaborative adaptation, and most dangerous of all, the absolute refusal to accept limitations. Hologram changed again, now showing the aftermath of the war. Dominion territory was in chaos, their military doctrine shattered, their expansion plans abandoned. But what caught Vexai's attention was something else entirely. Those symbols, she said, pointing to markings on the human ships. They're the same ones carved into the terracite. Yes, the humans called them letters, components of their written language. Each ship bore words that reflected their purpose, or their crew's dedication. Vexai studied the symbols more closely. What do they mean? This one, Keeper Prime indicated a symbol that appeared on multiple ships. It means hope. This one means courage. And this, he pointed to a marking on Sarah Chen's command vessel, means never again. A terrible understanding began to dawn. On Vexai, the council was afraid. Terrified, Keeper Prime confirmed. Not just of human military capability, but of what they represented. Humans didn't just fight the Dominion, they inspired the very species they protected to fight alongside them. Primitive civilizations that had never dreamed of resisting their oppressors suddenly began building their own weapons, organizing their own defenses. The holographic display showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Species after species was rising up against their more powerful neighbors, using tactics and strategies that bore unmistakable human influence. Revolution, Vexai breathed. They started a galactic revolution. The humans called it the right of all sentient beings to determine their own destiny, Keeper Prime said. But yes, revolution. And it was spreading. So the council acted to stop it. Not immediately. First, they tried negotiation. They offered Earth full membership, technology transfers, territorial concessions, anything to contain the human. Influence. What did the humans want? Keeper Prime's optical sensors dimmed. Justice. They wanted the stellar dominion dissolved, its leaders tried for crimes against sentient species. They wanted new laws protecting primitive civilizations. They wanted the galaxy to live up to its own proclaimed ideals. That's actually reasonable. Too reasonable. If the Council granted human demands, every oppressed species in the galaxy would expect similar treatment. The entire galactic order built on the principle that might makes right would collapse. Vexai began to understand the magnitude of what she was learning, so they chose to remove the humans instead. No, Keeper Prime said, his voice carrying a note of something like regret. The humans removed themselves. The hologram shifted one final time, showing the council chamber during what appeared to be an emergency session. The terrace seat was occupied by Sarah Chen, but something was wrong. Her image flickered, as if the recording system couldn't quite capture her presence. What am I looking at? The last time a human spoke in the council chamber, Keeper Prime replied. Chen announced humanity's withdrawal from galactic civilization. But why?
They were winning.
The galaxy was changing in their favor. Keeper Prime said. They realized something that terrified them even more than it terrified us. On the hologram, Sarah Chen stood to address the assembly. But now Vexai could see what the recording had only hinted at before the human delegate. Was surrounded by a visible energy field, and her eyes burned with light that seemed to come from within. Honored counselors, Keeper Prime quoted Chen's final words. We came to the stars, seeking knowledge, friendship, and understanding. Instead, we have discovered that we are not who we thought we were. What did she mean? The war had changed them, Keeper Prime explained. Not just their technology or their tactics, but something fundamental about their nature. The energy fields, the impossible victories, the ability to inspire entire species to revolution, these weren't just human characteristics. Then what? Were they Keeper Prime's optical sensors focused on Vexai with unsettling intensity? They were the early manifestations of a transformation. Humanity wasn't just a young species. They were a species in transition, evolving into something that had never existed before in galactic history. Evolving into what? We never found out, Keeper Prime said quietly, because Sarah Chen's final act was to ensure we never would. Chapter 4. The truth revealed. The holographic display showed Sarah Chen standing alone in the council chamber. But now Vexai could see that the human delegate had changed. Her form seemed to shift and blur, as if reality itself was having difficulty containing her presence. We withdraw from galactic civilization, Keeper Prime continued, quoting Chen's farewell address. Not in defeat, but in recognition of what we have become and what we might yet become if we remain among you. Vexai leaned forward, captivated despite her growing fear. What was happening to her? The humans called it ascension, Keeper Prime replied. Our scientists called it evolutionary acceleration beyond all known parameters. But Chen had a simpler explanation, which was, we are becoming what the universe needs us to become. The universe is not yet ready for what that means. The hologram zoomed in on Chen's face and Vexai gasped. The human's eyes no longer looked entirely human. They held depths that seemed to extend into dimensions that shouldn't exist. The transformation had begun during the war, Keeper Prime explained. At first it was subtle enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, the ability to see solutions that others missed. But by the end of the conflict, the changes were becoming impossible to hide. What kind of changes? Telepathic communication between human crews separated by light years, the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level through focused intention, predictive capabilities that bordered on precognition. Keeper Prime paused. And something else, something that terrified even the humans themselves. What? They were beginning to affect reality through belief alone. If enough humans believed something was possible, it became possible regardless of what the laws of physics said. Vexai felt her legs grow weak. She sank into a nearby chair, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. The final engagement with the stellar dominion proved it, Keeper Prime continued. The humans had been surrounded, outnumbered 1,000 to 1. According to every tactical analysis, they should have been annihilated. Instead, they simply weren't. Do you mean They ceased to exist in normal space-time for exactly 47 minutes. When they reappeared, the Dominion fleet had been disabled, not destroyed, simply shut down, as if someone had turned off a switch that controlled the basic forces holding their ships together. The holographic display showed the aftermath. Thousands of Dominion vessels floating dead in space, their crews unharmed, but their technology completely inert. How is that possible? Shouldn't be, Keeper Prime replied. But Sarah Chen provided an explanation that was somehow worse than not knowing. What did she say? We stopped believing in their weapons. For 47 minutes, every human in the fleet believed with absolute certainty that the Dominion ships could not harm us. Reality adjusted accordingly. Vexhai stared at the display in horror. That's not evolution. That's Godhood. Keeper Prime finished. Or something approaching it. The humans had become capable of reshaping reality through collective will. They were transcending the physical limitations that bound every other known species. And Chen recognized the danger. It's not just to galactic civilization, but to humanity itself. Power of that magnitude, growing at that rate, with no understanding of how to control it. The humans realized they could accidentally unmake entire star systems simply by having a bad day. The hologram showed Chen's final moments in the council chamber. As she spoke, the very air around her seemed to ripple with possibility. We are leaving, Keeper Prime quoted her words. We will take our ships, our people, and our dangerous potential far beyond the galactic rim, where we can learn to understand what we are becoming without threatening what already is. But why keep the seat? Vexhai asked. Why leave it empty for 2 centuries? Because of Chen's final promise, Keeper Prime said. She swore that humanity would return when they had learned to control their abilities. When they could stand among the galactic community, without posing an existential threat, and the memory wipe, Chen's doing as well. She used humanity's new abilities to erase detailed knowledge of human capabilities from galactic records, leaving only the basic facts of their existence. She wanted to ensure that when they returned, they would be judged on who they had become, not who they had been. Vexhai looked at the empty seat in the hologram, understanding finally dawning. The seat isn't empty because they're gone. It's empty because they're not ready to come back. Until now, Keeper Prime said quietly. What do you mean? The ancient AI gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show current astronomical data-deep space sensor readings, energy signatures, gravitational anomalies. 3 months ago, long-range sensors detected unusual phenomena in the void, beyond the galactic rim. Energy patterns consistent with advanced propulsion systems. Ships, Counselor Vexhai. Ships approaching from the direction where humanity disappeared 2 centuries ago. A sign of extreme stress among her species. They're coming back. Yes. And based on the energy signatures we're detecting, they've spent the last 200 years learning to harness abilities that make their previous capabilities look primitive.
How long before they arrive?
At their current rate of approach, approximately 18 standard days. Vexhai stood on unsteady legs, her mind racing. The council needs to know. We need to prepare to decide how to respond when they return. Do we? Keeper Prime asked. Consider carefully, Counselor. Humanity left because they recognized their own dangerous potential. They stayed away for 2 centuries to master abilities. That could reshape reality itself. If they are returning now, it can only mean one thing. What? They believe they are ready. The question is, are we ready for them? The holographic display showed the approaching energy signatures growing stronger. With each passing day, and in those shifting patterns of light and force, Vexhai thought she could see something that made her species. Most ancient fears pale in comparison. Humanity was coming home, and they were bringing possibilities that the galaxy had never imagined. What do we do? She whispered. Keeper Prime's optical sensors dimmed to their lowest setting. We wait, he said. We wait, and we hope that in learning to control their power, humanity has also learned wisdom. And if they haven't? Then Keeper Prime replied, the age of the Galactic Council may be coming to an end. and a new age one shaped by human will and human dreams will begin whether we want it or not. The archive chamber fell silent except for the hum of ancient machines preserving impossible truths. Outside, the dead star continued its eternal rotation, casting pale light across secrets that had shaped the galaxy for 2 centuries. In 18 days, those secrets would matter more than ever before. # epilogue. The return *, 17 days. Later, .. the Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 417 civilizations sat in perfect silence, their attention focused on the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. Long-range sensors showed the approaching fleet in unprecedented detail. 12 ships, not the thousands that many had expected, not the massive armadas that galactic powers typically fielded. 12 vessels of impossible design, their hulls seeming to shift between dimensions as they moved through space at velocities that should have required them to phase into hyperspace. But they remained in normal space-time, somehow moving faster than light without leaving the physical universe. Counselor Vexai stood at the central podium, the weight of knowledge making her feel ancient despite her relatively young age. Around her, the greatest minds in galactic civilization waited for her report on the Terra incident, the truth she had spent weeks preparing to reveal. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic amplification system. What I am about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. The Zephyrian delegation's coral thrones pulsed with nervous energy. The Keth swirled in their containment fields. Even the stoic Nexari showed signs of agitation in their optical patterns. For 2 centuries, we have begun every session by acknowledging the absence of the Terra delegation. Today, I can finally explain why they left and why they are now returning. Vexai spoke. She watched the approaching ships on the tactical display. They had decelerated to normal sublight speeds at the edge of the system, as if announcing their peaceful intentions. But the energy readings they emitted were beyond anything in the Council's databases. Humanity, Vexai continued, did not leave us because they were defeated or diminished. They left because they were becoming something that the galaxy had never seen before, a species capable of reshaping reality through collective will and determination. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. Several delegates activated their translation matrices, certain they had misunderstood. The records I have uncovered detail a species in the midst of an evolutionary leap beyond anything in our scientific models. When they departed, humans were beginning to manifest abilities that bordered on what we might call divine power. Ambassador Lirin of the Celestial Federation material, eyes above her platform, her ethereal form shimmering with agitation. Counselor Vexai, are you suggesting that we are about to receive a visit from gods? I am suggesting, Vexai replied carefully, that we are about to discover what humanity has become after 2 centuries of learning to master abilities that once threatened to destroy them and us. The tactical display updated, showing the human fleet entering the outer system. As the ships approached, something extraordinary began to happen. The very space around them started to ... sing. Harmonic frequencies that resonated through multiple dimensions created a melody that every species in the chamber could hear. Regardless of their auditory capabilities, it was beautiful, it was terrifying, and it was clearly intentional. Incoming transmission announced the chamber's AI source, lead vessel of the approaching Terra fleet. Audio only. Accept the transmission, Vexai ordered. The chamber's speakers crackled to life, and a voice filled the space, some unmistakably human, but carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. Greetings, Galactic Council. This is Admiral Alina Vasquez of the Terran Exploration Fleet. We ... we have come home.
And the voice paused.
And in that pause, Vexai heard something unexpected, uncertainty, fear, the weight of enormous responsibility. We know our departure left questions. We know our absence created mysteries. And we know that our return will challenge everything the galaxy has become accustomed to. But we also know that the time for isolation has passed. Another pause. When the voice resumed, it carried new strength. 2 centuries ago, my predecessor warned that humanity was becoming something dangerous, something that could threaten the stability of galactic civilization. She was right. But in the years since our departure, we have learned that the greatest danger was not what we might do to you, but what we might become if we remained separated from the community of sentient beings that gave our existence meaning. Vexai felt tears forming in her primary eyes. There was something in the human admiral's words that spoke to emotions she didn't know she possessed. We request permission to dock at Council Station and to reclaim our seat in this assembly, not as conquerors, not as gods, but as fellow travelers in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than any of us previously imagined. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Elder Thornock, of the Stonesinger Coalition, was the first to speak, his massive form rising from his granite throne. And if we refuse, if we decide that the risk of your presence outweighs the potential benefits? The response came immediately, but now it was transmitted directly into the minds of every being in the chamber, not as an invasion, but as a gentle sharing of thought. Then we will understand, came Admiral Vasquez's mental voice. Asterisk, we will withdraw again, perhaps for another 2 centuries, perhaps forever, but we hope, ... We hope that you will choose to trust us, as we have. Learn to trust ourselves. Asterisk Vexay looked around the chamber, seeing fear and wonder in equal measure on the faces of the assembled delegates. The choice before them would shape the future of galactic civilization. All in favor of granting the Terra delegation permission to return, she called out. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, Ambassador Learine raised her hand.
Elder Thornock.
Followed one by one, as if compelled by something deeper than rational thought, every delegate in the chamber voted in favor. Motion carried unanimously, Vexhai announced, her voice barely steady. Welcome home, humanity. On the tactical display, the human ships began their final approach to Council Station. And as they drew closer, Vexhai could see that the Terra, seat in the chamber empty for over 2 centuries, had begun to glow with warm, golden light. The age of humanity's exile was ending. The age of possibilities was about to begin.